Hello, and welcome to another episode of AI in the Classroom Daily, a podcast helping educators make sense of AI without the hype. I'm Dan Cogan-Drew, and transparently, I use AI as a thinking partner in preparing each of these episodes because I think the best way to talk honestly about AI in education is to work with it openly. So let me start today with an admission. When I think back to the writing assignments I gave as a 10th grade English teacher, I'm pretty sure many of them would not survive AI today. A student with access to GPT could complete a lot of what I assigned without doing the thinking I wanted them to do. I don't think I'm alone in that. I think a lot of teachers are quietly making the same calculation about their own assignments right now. So rather than asking the question that's dominated the conversation so far, how do we stop students from using AI on writing assignments, I want to start this episode by asking a different one. What does a writing assignment look like that a student wouldn't want to outsource in the first place? I came across a useful answer recently. Earlier this year, I was listening to an episode of the TED Radio Hour on NPR featuring Megan Sullivan, a professor of philosophy at Notre Dame. The episode was about her work with AI developers on ethics, but it sent me to her book, The Good Life Method, co-authored with Paul Blaschko. The book is built around a course they teach at Notre Dame called God and the Good Life. And in that course, there's a writing assignment that I think has something to add to our conversation today, even though it wasn't designed with AI in mind. And that assignment is called My Apologies. Now, before I describe it, a quick note on the word apologies. In Greek, apologia doesn't mean I'm sorry. It means a reasoned defense, what Socrates delivered before his accusers, what Martin Luther King Jr. wrote from a Birmingham jail. So here's the assignment. Students pick a real choice they've made in their own life, a major they're pursuing that their family doesn't approve of, a relationship people in their life may be questioning, a commitment that some see as off track. Then they write a 3 to 5 page essay in 3 parts. First, they explain the choice and who their accusers are. Second, they lay out their best arguments their accusers would make against them. And third, drawing on philosophical concepts they've been studying in the course, they defend their choice. Now that's the assignment, and I want to walk through why I think it's worth a closer look from the perspective of AI, because I think every teacher, not because I think every teacher should assign it, but because it embodies useful, transferable design principles. So here are 5 principles as I see them. 1, it's personal and grounded in the student's actual life. It goes beyond an instruction like include a personal reflection at the end. The choice the student is defending is the substance of the assignment. So there's no version of this essay that doesn't require the student to really show up in a personal way. 2, it has stakes. The choice has to be one others have actually disagreed with. It isn't a narrative, it's an argument. Without real disagreement, there's nothing to write. And if the student can't name the people who would push back on this choice, they can't do the assignment. 3, it requires the student to make the strongest case their accusers would make. This is the part I find most striking. The student has to lay out the best version of the case against their own choice, generously and in good faith. The AI can do generic counterarguments, but it cannot do the specific counterarguments the specific people in this student's life would actually raise. The accusers have to be named, they have to be real, and they'll be known to the student in ways that AI can't access. 4, the academic content serves the student's argument rather than the other way around. This is the move that flips the typical assignment. Instead of philosophy, the content matter in this case, being something to study and reproduce, it's a resource that the student deploys to make their case in this assignment. I think that changes the student's motivation to engage with the material. The ethics, the epistemology, the metaphysics aren't content to be summarized. They're tools for the student to use as they write their apology. And 5, the writing has a specific known audience that the student must persuade. I mentioned this earlier. Not an academic audience, it's not the teacher. It's really a particular person or a community that matters to the student. They know these people's objections, the vocabulary that they might use. Persuasion requires that kind of audience knowledge, and AI is pretty bad at arguing on somebody else's behalf. The student knows their accuser, and the AI does not. I'll say one more thing. Those are the 5 principles, and I'll say one more thing about this assignment. It really has nothing to do with AI directly, but I think there are implications that are interesting. I was a 10th grade English teacher, and as that 10th grade English teacher, I made the mistake of assigning a very generic topic on Macbeth, and I never forget this because it happened to be fate versus free will. And what I remember is realizing what a bad assignment it was as I started to get into the stack of essays. Over the weekend following my students handing the work in on Friday, I was forced to read more than 60 essays that basically said the same thing. It wasn't just boring for my students to write, it was excruciating for me to give the better part of my weekend reading basically the same argument again and again and again. I got tired, I started skimming, I was looking basically for variations on arguments I'd already seen by the 5th or 6th paper. What strikes me about the My Apologies assignment is that no two of these essays are going to be the same. The teacher who's reading them is going to encounter 60 distinct choices, 60 distinct disagreements, 60 distinct relationships with the people who matter to those students. That's not just going to be better for the students, it's actually going to be better for the teacher, and that's going to make the teacher a more attentive reader. And in my experience, attentive reading is where the best feedback comes from. So part of what makes an assignment AI resistant, so to speak, is also what makes it humane on the grading end. Now, quick word on application. I want to be candid, this is a college level assignment and it's built on weeks of scaffolded preparation. If you follow the link, you can see some of the scaffolds in the assignment itself. It's not meant for K-12, and I don't want to hold it up as a template for K-12 teaching. But what I do want to say is that there are principles here that translate and transfer even if the assignment itself does not. For example, a 5th grade teacher and a high school history teacher, a middle school ELA teacher are going to need to find their own versions. But I think the design questions, is there a real personal stake? Is there real disagreement? Is there a specific audience the students has to persuade? Those questions are transferable and can work at any level. So the practical takeaway, a lot of the AI in the classroom conversation, I think, has gotten stuck on a question about how to detect AI use, how to deter it, how to write policies about it. We've seen many faults in AI detection systems, and we see a general trend moving away from using AI to detect AI, which I think is promising because a lot of that is wasted breath. But what this assignment suggests is that there's a more durable answer upstream of all of those questions, and it's really in the design of the work itself. The assignments that are most resistant to AI offloading aren't necessarily the most technically clever ones. They're the ones where the student's own life, their perspective, and stake in the outcome are the substance of the work, not an addition to it. I don't think it's a new pedagogical principle. Good teachers have always known that students engage more deeply with work that feels theirs. What's new is that the AI has raised the cost of not designing this way. Assignments that got by without this rigor before, now they don't. So as I leave my thoughts with you here, I want to hear your experience. Which of your current writing assignments do you think still holds up under AI? What have you been learning this year about how well it holds up, on what basis? I really need to hear your opinions, your lived experience, because I'm no longer in the classroom. So this is me memorializing my experience teaching and looking and surveying the landscape today. But I'd love to be grounded in your experience. Please add some notes to the comments. And as always, thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.